Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Tech Club on a somewhat gloomy November afternoon. But we have quite an exciting presentation today. This is Paul Epp again with us to share his knowledge and his interesting insights into this world of AI, which is here whether we like it or not. So I'm so grateful that he decided to come back and visit with us this another time. Mining the collective mind, the role of artificial intelligence in human artistry should be fascinating. Just quickly before we begin, we always like to shout out to Capital Federal that does indeed sponsor and wrote a grant for Tech Club. We're very grateful about that and for I'm trying to do two things. I'm not good at that. And also for retroactive and also the Katzman's Foundation, which also supports us. So I'm going to be quiet now and ask Paul to start. And I'll be watching the chat box. So as we're going, if you have a question, please put it there and we'll get into the interesting world of AI. Thanks for being with us, Paul.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me again, Laurel. Thanks everyone for joining. This presentation today is actually a version of a live presentation. Yes, we still have those as well, that I gave a couple of weeks ago at my alma mater, actually, Vanderbilt University. And I studied music years ago, and this is a new version of the presentation that I gave that was for a group of musicians, the college level. So um, the the focus for today is more philosophical than the first two presentations that I gave for this group. But it's essentially the answer to the question about what's going to happen, or at least my answer to what's going to happen to the artist in our society. As AI is coming online, as you know, it's here, as Laurel said, and it's not going away. And you all probably seen all of these really excited tweets or in a negative way perhaps that Hollywood is going to go away by the end of 2026 because of AI. There's not going to be any role for humans anymore. I don't believe that. I actually think humans are going to matter more, and I'll go through a little bit um, my thinking on that idea. But that's what we're going to talk about today, and I have lots of time for questions at the end. So I know everybody's on mute now, um, but think about some of those questions, pop them in the chat. Like Laurel said, she's going to be watching that for me again. And again, thanks for having me, and we will just get started.
Great.
So, we talk about mining the collective mind because that's one way that I think of AI. These large language model based chatbots is what we're considering AI for the conversation today. Of course, there are many different types of AI we've talked about. We've touched on them briefly before. Um, but the collective mind is basically, the collection of everything that's ever been written on the internet, or transcribed in any way, and we're interacting with it. But you can think of that as a collective mind. And we're talking about, of course, the role of the human artist in that new paradigm. Um, I like to show this image because this is sort of a strategy for how you might approach uh, AI in general, technology in general, which is a submarine captain. This is how I do it. Like I said, a submarine captain will spend most of their time underwater doing their work, doing their thing, living their life. But they do have to come up once in a while for maybe not air, but to look around, see what's going on. And
Mhm.
that's a good way to sort of approach technology, I think. It's all, of course, depends on how often you do that. Um, I'm more interested in it than some, and I work in that industry, so come up more often. But you do need to keep your sanity, and all of us have to do that. And so you should maybe, before even talking about AI, think about how you're approaching technology in general and just new things. You don't want to stay underwater forever. You don't want to stay above water the whole time. So you sort of think about how you might approach that and you come up with a plan that works for you. Now, this is an AI generated image. Since we're on mute, I won't ask for evaluations on what this image looks like, but if you if you're looking at it, it really doesn't make much sense. At first, you're like, oh, submarine captain, yeah, coming up for air, yep, he's in that submarine. But if you look at it closely, this little pipe is coming out of the ocean. It doesn't appear to actually be connected to any sort of submarine. Um, this is actually interesting because this is a good example of it is in fact AI generated art that I created with the using a chatbot. Um, and it looks pretty good at first glance, but it really is not something you'd ever probably use in any meaningful way, except for a presentation like this. Like I said, it's supposed to be photorealistic, but the if you look closely, the the part where he's sitting does it comes up and isn't actually connected to anything. So
Right.
just something to think about. Um, leave you with that impression as we go through this. I like to start with a definition of AI for those who are new, even if you've been to my previous presentations. I think of AI as basically when computers learn, problem solve, and decide in human-like ways. We call it artificial intelligence because it's not actual intelligence like a human would have. It's created by humans, but it learns in similar ways, and there are lots of comparisons made to human intelligence, but it's not the same. Um, and one description of these large language models, these AI chatbots that I heard recently, is that they are more like ghosts than humans, which is sort of a useful way to think about it because they're not humans, but they are sort of like beings that know the entire internet, but you still have to interact with them in a certain way. And if you can go back to my previous presentation about some of the basics of prompting, which is how we are interacting with these chatbots these days. Um, so starting with the definition there, large language models, again, just a bit of review here. This is what we're talking about for the purposes of the presentation today. These, what we know as AI chatbots, ghosts that have read everything that we wrote and learned to speak our language. In my case, it's English. Um, they've read everything on the internet that's ever been written. Um, not everything, but a really large part of it. And that's what they're using to answer all of their questions. And then there are all of the technology that has enabled them to do that. Goes back to a couple of research papers and a bunch of work that's been sort of in process over the decades. Um, and then using these chatbots, um, those of you, I'm sure some of you have tried them by now. Um, There's sort of three primary uses that I talk about when we talk about chatbots. Um, Having a research assistant that will go find information for you, a tireless one that literally never gives up, it won't ever stop. That's a very big differentiator from humans, the ones I know anyway. Everyone has a stopping point. AI does not. A teacher, a coach, a thought partner. This one's going to be really relevant to what we're going to talk about later. That thing that can motivate you. It can explain a new concept to you. It can debate an idea with you. Um, that's probably where I use it the most overall.
Mhm.
And these overlap a little bit with each other. But then the third one is creative assistant, which is the one we're going to talk most about today, where it can help you actually develop something new, piece of art or
Mhm.
other types of creative work. Art can be is usually, well, fundamentally art is subjective, I suppose, but the creative assistant can be useful in creating art. Um, then to talk about AI and the human artist, we have to talk about theories of technology and creativity. They work together, they overlap, but they're not exactly the same thing, and I want to separate those a little bit. Um, if you were to use AI, for example, to ask the question, which I have done, give me a description of the different popular theories of creativity or any kind of theory of creativity. You'll find elements. I've boiled it down to three elements that I see in almost all definitions of creativity. And the first one is combination. Creativity involves almost every theory that I've read about creativity involves some kind of combination where you take one idea and you combine it with another one. Or you take one color and you combine it with another one. You take one musical idea and you combine it. And it might be something that you heard years ago. It might be something that you saw, just recently. But combining things is a huge component of creativity.
Mhm.
Another big component of creativity is iteration. So that's just cycles of doing something over and over again. There are obviously mediums, media of creativity where you just sort of do it one time and that's it. As a jazz musician, improvisation, you get one shot and that's that's the experience you're left with, and that's part of the art. But even that, you are iterating, you are over and over again practicing to get to the point where you can create that performance.
Mhm.
And iteration is just baked into any artist's work. All you have to do is ask one of them. And then experimentation. It may go without saying, but every artist is experimenting. Um, Whether or not you call something the finished product or an experiment is sort of up to the artist. It's subjective, like a lot of artistic elements, but these things are definitely part of creativity in my belief and my research. So when we take these elements and then we look at theories of technology, the best definition of technology, most of them combine these concepts. And I have automation, leverage, and efficiency. Now, these probably sound like boring engineering terms, and to some extent they are, but automation is basically just having something, it's like your car. It drives for you. It doesn't, you don't have to, it's automated. It's something that you can set it and forget it. Big part of technology. Leverage is the conceptual part of technology where, if you think at the most basic level, if I have a lever, I can lift something heavier.
Mhm.
And so every technology has some sort of leverage. Um, and then efficiency is just doing something faster, doing something better. For most of us, typing is going to be a faster way to get words on a page than actually writing them.
Mhm.
So these are the components of technology, and I wanted to go through these just to get your mind sort of tuned toward this way of thinking, as even as we're about to talk about human artistry. The best summary of this is just to say that technology means tools. Tools that get you automation, leverage, and efficiency, but at its core, technology is about tools. And I can't remember the fundamental of the word technology, where the word comes from, the etymology, but it's got something to do with tools. Um, and if you don't believe me, then just, think about the artist and think about whether they can do what they do without tools. And certainly there are types of art that don't involve tools. But even if you're, say, a dancer, your body is the artistic medium. You're using your body as a tool, I would argue. So to say that artists use tools is one of the more obvious things that you can say about an artist, in my mind. So I'm going to try to convince you that artists use tools um, just like anyone else. When we talk about human artistry, which is what we're going to talk about now, I break this down into after doing a lot of thinking and research recently, but also over the course of my life, I would break human artistry down into two components, and certainly there may be more, but these are the two main areas that I would ascribe to an artist, the two disciplines or descriptions. One is the technician, and the technician is the artist who uses mechanics or tools, if you will, to get some kind of emotion or some kind of message. Um, this is what the tools do. The better that you know your tools, if you know how to play an instrument, the better that you know it, the better you're going to be able to elicit an emotion from the listener. The better you are with the paintbrush, the better you are going to be able to elicit whatever you're trying to elicit from the person looking at the painting. The point is that every artist is a technician, that they're using tools, and that the better that they understand and know how to use those tools, the more effective they're going to be at eliciting that emotion. Now, the other component of the artist is that every artist is a philosopher of some kind. So if you're going to use some kind of technique to communicate something or elicit an emotion, you have to decide what that will be, what your intention is. Even if your intention is to say, I don't know what my intention is. My intention is to be intentionless and see what the listener does when I do whatever I'm going to do. But every artist will have to determine what they are trying to express. Um, and these are two ways, like I said, the two essential components to me about human artistry. And as you might have guessed, AI is going to be helpful as a tool in for the technician and for the philosopher. Um, I can see some of your hands. We can do just a quick show to say if anyone has heard of the term AI slop, just raise your hand in case I can see you. So AI slop is this next slide, and I'll come back to the technician philosopher. AI slop is the stuff that AI creates. It's that picture I showed you at the beginning. It's this is not really good. Nobody needs to look at it. Nobody expended any effort looking at it, creating it. Why would I even bother? It's just trash. It's out there. It's polluting. Um, we don't need it. The perhaps contrarian's view is contained in this post on X, and this is a fairly famous venture capitalist um, who argues that the viewers will judge AI slop. And he gets to a little bit to the core here of some of my thinking. He says it opens up so many more avenues of creativity if you have an imagination. This is the same initial reaction to digital music in the 90s and digital photography in the 2000s. There will be a role for traditional video, but many more dimensions of creative video through AI. And it references the release of uh, Sora 2, which is a video generation model, um, which is one of those things that people are really scared about in Hollywood um, because it's quickly generating things that look like real movies. Um, And I agree with this largely to say that there's going to be more expression, there's going to be more opportunity when we have these tools available to more people, and having, something that I may say is slop or it's nothing, it's useless art, somebody might somebody else might be intrigued by it, or they might get an idea, or they might be inspired by it in some way. And that's kind of to boil down um, a big difference between the optimists and the pessimists about the use of AI and how it applies to human artistry. So, because you've asked me and not someone else to come here today, I'm going to leave you with a few conclusions, and then I would like to take some questions. Um, the first one is another perhaps obvious statement, but if we think about that, it's important to think about this one, I believe, because everything is a function of time. There are plenty of things that I could do if I had 150 years to learn them and do them, but they're not realistic for me if it's going to take 150 years. Um, Likewise, if something takes me a week, I'm going to be much less likely to do it than if I can do the same thing in a day. And that's a good way to think about how AI is going to impact human artistry, is the amount of time that it might take you to learn how to do something. AI is going to train people to do things more quickly, artists included. Um, it's going to generate some of that stuff. It's going to automate some of those processes that the artist simply doesn't really need to do. Um, but you need to think about it in terms of time. If it's going to make it that much shorter, it's going to make it that much more accessible to some number of people, and that opens up more opportunities for expression. So, few of my conclusions here. AI is actually going to accelerate creativity collectively. Collectively, I mean among all of us. If we have some of these tools, we're going to be more likely to take the initiative to try something in the first place that we never would have tried. Whether you're professional, whether you've never created anything in your life, these tools are going to speed that process and lead to more creative projects happening simply by making it that much, taking that much less time to do it. Um, Second conclusion is that AI will expand our modes of expression. Um, we have audio, we have video, our limits, we have all the senses, feeling, touch. There are all sorts of different modes of expression. Film obviously wasn't possible until we had motion pictures. We had video, what we know as video today. But that hasn't always been around. Um, it's going to be hard for me to speculate what some of those new modes will even be, but um, we're going to start to see more combinations of things. If you go back to that initial point about combining, combination is an essential form of creativity. You're going to see people combining audio and video in new ways. You're going to see people who maybe are really good at there are um, actual record deals now with, for example, there was a poet based in Mississippi recently who got a recording contract from a record company. They don't do any music, but they have a way to generate music from their poetry, um, and it led to an actual record contract. Um, and we don't know if all of these things are 100% true or to what extent they are, but you can assume that that's going to happen if it hasn't already. This was a story in the news. Um, Third point is that we are actually going to need humans more than ever, and that's primarily for taste. So where the human may not be needed anymore to write the notes on the page, um, or even to put them into the software that records them. Um, People will still do that. it may be part of the performance itself, but what we can't get rid of is the need for taste. So every artist becomes an artist because they feel that they have taste. Um, and there's a really good clip on a podcast, I believe, from it's skipping my mind, Ira Glass from This American Life. He was the host of that show, and I can't remember what the clip is called, but um, he has a point about taste and how artists got into this business, so to speak, for that reason. Now we have people who we need humans more than ever to be that gatekeeper for what makes it through. AI slop will still be created, and not everyone has equal taste, we'll say. Some people's taste is more one way than the other. It's more preferable for some people compared to others. But we will need people more than ever to make those decisions about what makes it through, what you attach your name to, what you call good, what you call not so good. So we're actually going to need humans more than ever for all of this stuff. One more example. Um, I have sort of a side project that I have been working on with a friend um, who he wrote a children's book and I wrote music for it. Um, Now, this book he's not a professional writer, he's not a digital artist, but he was able to create this children's book um, with he did all produced all of the writing, we'll say by himself, produced all of the images. He's very good with technology, very good with software, and he was able to create this entire book that I think is actually quite good, modifying things using his taste. He generated all of the images. He didn't draw them, but you can think of him as the producer of this book, just like you'll have a producer of a film who didn't record everything or didn't write the script. Um, so this is just an example of one of those projects that never would have happened except for AI, because suddenly it was that much more within reach, took that much less time for him to create it, and is a great example of why we still need humans for taste and why the humans will never be completely replaced. Um, so I'm going to end just my portion of the presentation with a challenge for you, which is simply that all of you should start creating something. Um, if you haven't before, whether or not you use AI, um, it's a great thing to do. Um, it's good for all sorts of reasons, and it's also going to be part of the digital record forever now. The AIs are training on creative content, which has its own, um, you know, legal implications. There are ethical decisions to be made, but it's going to happen. AI is going to continue to be training on content, and the more voices that we have represented as artists, the better. So this is just sort of a personal. I try not to give advice, but I would. This is my one challenge, we'll say, for everyone is to try creating something and see what it does for you. Um,
Okay.
so thanks for having me, and I'd love to take your questions. If you want to see a little bit more about my work, you can go to any of these sites.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. We do have three questions, all very different in the chat box, so, or at least comments. We'll start with the first one. CBS Morning had a creator of an AI singer. The human wrote the lyrics, as you mentioned. AI created a singer, an image, and the music and the voice, but there was a lot of skepticism. But I think AI music, art, movies, etc., is a category of each art that is worthy as art as long as there is transparency and we know it's AI. The computer is a tool as it has been for a long time. Any comments about that?
That's a softball. I agree 100%. It's
Mhm,
it's a tool. Um, that let's call that person a lyricist.
mhm,
Um, they are their lyrics now have a mode of expression that they didn't have before.
mhm,
Um, every artist will make decisions, as you do in any endeavor, about where the focus should be, what's more important than something else. And if you're a lyricist, your lyrics are going to be the most important component. That's what you want people to come away with. A lot of this has to do with where you want the focus to be. And I agree 100% if you're transparent about what's going on, um, you get to dictate what your reputation becomes, which is all you have in this world anyway.
mhm,
To say that I'm a lyricist, these things were generated by AI. You may enjoy them, you may not. And it also may be part of the process. I mean, every artist has an ongoing process, and this may be the rough draft. This may be what gives life and attention to the lyrics that then creates a larger project that involves real humans collaborating, if that's the end goal.
mhm,
But you can see it, you can see it all sorts of ways, and I agree with that conception. That's how I see it.
mhm. Here's another question that actually goes back to something the two of us were discussing before we started the Zoom. This person writes, I was 5 minutes late to the program. If this was discussed, forgive me and don't cover it again, but I visited my Seattle son this week and he was horrified I was using AI because of the environmental costs. What are the environmental costs? And should I feel bad as a left-leaning Lawrencean if I use it? I found it very efficient and helpful as a result of your last Zoom presentation. So, any comments?
Sure, yeah. I mean, r regardless of whether you lean left or right, I mean, the facts are that AI is a huge power consumer. Um, the forces of the economy are not going to allow that to slow down. Um, and certainly there are environmental impacts to extreme power consumption. Um, now, as an avowed technologist, I am obligated to point out that technology has been used uh, throughout history to solve problems that we didn't know how to solve. And one of those might be the way that we handle power consumption and um, the efficiency with which these things work. I worked with a company for a short time um, that had developed a way to cut down on inference costs, which are the costs that uh, some of the costs involved where the AI has to go retrieve information. And so there are all sorts of ways that just the mechanics of how AI works are improving very quickly alongside the power consumption. Now, these trends are still real, um, but actually, Laurel and I were talking about this before we came online. Um, there are all sorts of ways that technology has enabled us to improve the efficiency of power consumption. Servers have to be cool. You can put them underwater. They're talking about putting servers in space. Um, that's becoming more affordable with more of the activity that's going on with space companies that are putting stuff in space, literally outer space. Um, I would point to examples like food consumption, which is not to say that the food system is perfect in any way. It's an evolving thing, but we have been able to feed an expanding population. using technology um, at a level that many people thought was never possible. Like there were plenty of people who predicted famine across the world by at least by 2025, and it hasn't happened exactly how they predicted it. Um, I would say it hasn't happened to the general population of the entire world.
Mhm.
Point being that technology is how we will get out of these problems. We don't always see the solution because we are depending on things that haven't been invented. And that's my belief is that we need to keep allowing invention. We need to keep creating stuff. Inspiration comes from all different places. You never know what might inspire something else. And so getting more activity, more innovation, more intention around solving these problems, technology is going to be our way out.
Mhm. There's a follow-up comment from the person that spoke about the CBS Morning. Open AI, for example, is trying to create all of its own energy using solar and non-waste nuclear. It'll take some time, but that's one answer to the energy issue. So a little bit of a
Yeah.
comment from someone who's paid some attention to this.
Microsoft was talking about, I don't remember if they approved it yet. They were talking about creating their own nuclear power plant. Um, Nuclear technology has changed a lot over the years, and it's actually a very clean way of producing power compared to, say, coal. Um, there are safety concerns, but those like technology is helping us solve those problems too. Never fast enough, but we have to we have to be we have to see which direction it's heading.
Mhm.
And actually, a quick point here: the when we talk about the environmental concerns and whether technology is natural or not, um, this was a slide that I sort of had uh, stored away. But if we think about technology as I think it's a natural process. It's a natural evolution. Using tools is natural. I mean, humans aren't even the only ones that use tools. Like this is just a slide ahead in the back, but like animals use tools in all sorts of ways to get leverage for their environment. It doesn't prove that that every kind of technology that we try is a good thing, but it means that there is a you sort of have to decide if you believe that using tools, using technology is something that should be pursued or not. Obviously, I'm in the camp of um, that it should be, but it doesn't. Regardless of what your political beliefs are or anything, I don't see them as connected to this belief. They will try to tell you that it is, maybe in some way or another, but um, I think it's a part of the natural way that things can improve, and we should put more effort into it.
Here's another question. There was an interesting discussion on NPR earlier today regarding the challenge of copyright and AI for not only artists, but scientists and authors. And the question is, your thoughts?
My thought is always that the technology is going to always stay ahead of the legal system, and that the legal system is always going to be kept catching up. I mean, the legal system is actually a form of technology in itself. It's a way that we deal with, it's a tool for dealing with problems that come up for, fairly compensating people, um, at least what society has decided about how we can address, theft of intellectual property and that kind of thing. Anthropic is an AI company. If those of you have heard of Claude, I'm going to forget the number. I feel like it was, I don't even remember if it was billion or million. It was at least $150 million that they paid to copyright on copyright infringement of authors. And I don't remember how you claim that. Um, but they had to pay real money, and it could have been a lot more. Um, because they had their AI had trained on the author's text. Um, Now there's whether or not you are stealing something when you have read it and then stored the relationships between the tokens that are resulting from scanning your work, that to the point where you can reproduce large parts of that work in a chatbot setting. Like I said, these are new things that the legal system has never encountered before. And there are plenty of people uh, who have a vested interest in a one outcome or the other. Um, those the attorneys are going to that's going to be a big business for them defending intellectual property holders and those who create the intellectual property. Um, it's going to be sort of like a tax. Um, the more stuff you create, the more of it's going to get stolen in some way or another. I mean, the internet is just sort of the next evolution of that, and then AI is the next. The internet is the first evolution. That AI is going to just make that move faster, like we were talking about before. It's all a function of time. And I don't, some people, you're not going to be able to make as much money doing this or that thing. Is that fair or not? That's something that's up for debate. How does that change your career? My advice is always just think about how it might impact what you would do and adjust accordingly instead of waiting for the legal system to catch up.
Mhm. That's amazing. It is, yeah, the intellectual property. I remember once someone asked me just for a recipe, and they were excusing themselves, saying, "Well, however, I do understand it's your intellectual property." And I thought, "Wow, you're quite welcome to have a copy of this recipe." Are there any other questions? I'm standing by here. We've got the phone lines open. I just wondered if anybody else has any other questions or anything else that they uh, want to share, or are you already busy creating? Uh,
That's it.
I had to think too. I mean, I'm quite a newbie to this, but I flashed for a moment on the Shutterfly. I'm sure many people who are listening in have done that. I mean, I can take some of my pictures and make up some words and use that, and I mean, that's a book. It's a one and done, but it's a
Yeah.
book, and I used the tool. And it seemed to me a little bit bigger extension of that philosophically in every other way. Of there's just all this stuff out there, and you can use it any way you want.
Yeah, and I was telling these young musicians for my presentation for the university that these may be tools that help you sort of train your mind's ear in their case, or train your mind's eye to conceive of these things more quickly. I mean, in business, you're spinning up pictures and words to help communicate an idea so
Mhm.
that somebody can very quickly understand or more quickly understand what they might be paying for or what they might be trying to undertake. The artist is doing the same thing, and that they're trying to train themselves to imagine what they're creating so that they have that blueprint in their head that they can use to create. Um, One of the big uses for the artist, I'm arguing, is going to be training yourself. If you,
Where's the key to the storage unit?
when I was a musician, learning, years ago, most of my musical training took place when YouTube wasn't widely available. Kids that were born, in the 2000s had YouTube from the very beginning. Now you can get like, if you just take music as an example, you can get all sorts of small details about technique, about just all sorts of things, watching someone play something versus hearing them play it. You just have more information when you can see the visual and hear it. And that's another example of just technology um, helping to train the musicians. And the point is, you will see more players who have better technique now as a result of that, I believe,
Mhm.
than ever before. Anyone who is worried about, oh, technology's ruined music and you're not going to get good musicians anymore, they're not going to play the violin anymore, it's not true. They're better. Their technique is better. Now, the human component is the challenge, but that's been the challenge forever. Are you playing in a way that relates to people? Are you playing in a way, like I said, the technician? Are you able to elicit that emotion? Can you connect what you're able to do technically with what you have learned to do as a result of technology? Um, but that's just one example of how, things there still exist challenges, but they're different challenges.
And that is, it's just amazing. I know. I hear more young people say they watch YouTube all the time. I mean, that's their preferred entertainment.
Compared to TV or movies, you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just can get lost for hours on the YouTube. It is fascinating.
And some things are a better fit for YouTube
Mhm.
than others. That was my point about the medium. YouTube is, in many ways, YouTube has, well, it actually represents several different type of media. So we would call it all video, but video is just sort of the catch-all word to describe how the information's getting to you. A medium might be, a 30-second video clip is a new medium. There are plenty of people making quite a lot of money making 30-second or less video clips and putting them on a social media channel. That is a new medium.
Mhm.
That is not something that you could have gone to a television studio, I believe, 20 years ago and said, I've got this great idea. It's going to make you lots of money. So be my producer. It's going to be 30-second video clips. They would have, God knows what they would have told you. But that's an example. You might be the poet who uses AI generated images just as reactions to your poetry. What would technology do with my poetry? It doesn't mean it's the same thing that people would do. Um, but it's like an experiment. If you go back to my points, combination, iteration, and experimentation, the components of creativity, it may just be the first step in what you're doing.
While you were speaking, someone piped up, I watch YouTube all the time.
So do
And
I.
and I don't, but I was just thinking, I know when I was doing some knitting, you can just ask that technology, show me again how you do that stitch. And you just put that stitch in there and up pop 15 different people showing you how to do that stitch, and it's astounding.
Yeah.
The things that you can learn. Um, um, it is
And,
amazing, and watching people do it and doing it different ways. And it's for me, possibly I'm a visual learner. I do like to do it with my hands as well. That really settles it in for me, but it's been very interesting. So yeah.
and if you're looking for some of those practical applications of AI, I mean the AI chatbots, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, um, and Claude, these ones that we hear about over and over again. Perplexity is a good one for research. Um, I use them for well, my artistic process is usually music, and I have to use software to record or to record what I've written. Um, and the software changes all the time, and the it's obnoxious, and I don't have time to sit there and learn what your changes are every time. So I go to AI and I ask AI what my specific problem is. I do it in human language because humans have been complaining about these things on the internet long enough that the AI now understands what the problem is. And they've had, instead of my having to go find someone on the internet who's posted about this or however else I would do that, usually I would give up. You just wouldn't, you'd find another way or you wouldn't do something. Now I can go give it my specific problem and describe it as well as I can, and it can guess at what I'm saying, and if it's not right, I can correct it, and I can walk it through, and it can walk me through solving a software problem. I
Amazing.
was telling Laurel at the beginning before we started, I am a skeptic about AI. I am an optimist, a techno optimist, you might call me, but I am skeptical about what it's capable of, which is why I have to rely on experimenting with it. I have to use it all the time to see, okay, I can depend on it for this, not for this. And it might be different next week, but at least for this week, I know it's good for these things. Um, and that's been a big one for me is learning to use in my line of work, I use lots of different software tools. I'm in software lots of time, helping to develop software as well. AI software is something that AI understands really well because a lot of things have been written about it, a lot of things have been posted about it, and it can walk me through how to fix almost any software problem in a fraction of the time. And you can see how if the software tool is part of my process, that makes my artistic process, even in that way, better.
That is amazing. Yeah. Well, we're all, I guess the only thing that's constant is change, and change is something most of us don't like. So, just on that level, we're off to the races on the whole thing. But, um, I, I find it very exciting, and thrilling, frightening, but, uh, you know,
Like any new thing.
I think being a skeptic as well as an optimist is a good thing. Um, it's helpful because it'll help us get through all these upcoming things that are going to be coming along and are here already, and we don't even know it. But thank you to the person who had just come back from Seattle with the bad news about AI, because I was wanting to bring that up anyway and ask about that because, we always hear there's some doom there's always doom behind the curtain somewhere. But I know
And
that
that,
I
and that
feel
message sells very well, by the way.
that's very true. Yeah, that's a lot of that
Don't
going around these days.
don't forget about that part of it, that these doomsday messages sell much better than the optimistic messages, which doesn't make them more true, it makes them more pervasive.
And more powerful. That is very true. We are about out of time, and already the thumbs up are flying on the screen. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for being with us. You've given us a lot to think about and talk about, and a lot to learn about. And I thank you for the um, urging to get out there and create something, because I think that will help us all. We're all here to create.
Happy to do it. Thanks for having me. If you want to
Oh,
get in
God.
touch with me, pauleptech.com. Everything is there.
Thank you.
Uh, yeah, would love to engage.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for being here, and we'll see you again at the next event. And thanks for being here. my head, I think I'm gonna have to go just lie down for a while. My head is just spinning, but anyway, thanks for being with us, Paul. You make it all so clear. I really appreciate that. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.